This is the TOC that we are going to cover in this training session. So we will start with the very basic and fundamentals. Definitely, we will not spend much time here because I would be sharing a lot of external resources that you would need to go through uh, to to understand these concepts and come back with any questions or clarifications that you may need. But definitely, this also covers fundamentals part. So cloud and security fundamentals, Microsoft Azure fundamentals. For this, this was part of prerequisites. I've already shared the documentation and my previous session recordings with you. You can go through it. That will give you in-depth knowledge of about these concepts. Then it starts with Azure networking. So the ultimate goal of this training is to first build a strong foundation and then move to Microsoft Entra ID. See, the challenge that we have, in today's professionals are the unorganized knowledge. And that's what I have experienced. And something that led me to come into this industry when I left my full-time employment with one of the big four in 2019, I, I actually set up Cloud Security Center of Excellence from ground up there. And while I was hiring for that center of excellence, I also experienced this pain wherein the knowledge was organized for most of the participants who I was trying to bring in from different business units into my SBU or who I was hiring from outside. So when I say unorganized knowledge, it basically means that let's say you're part of cybersecurity. Now, in cybersecurity, you work with identity and access management domain. But do you know that identity and access management has further subdomains? Subdomains like privileged identity management, privileged access management, identity lifecycle management. Now, what happens? You primarily work with one of those domains and you pick and choose a tool that you primarily work with. Now, I'm not saying that you work with. It is like you are made to work with a solution or an enterprise tool to deliver your job role and responsibilities at your employer. And that is where your knowledge becomes fragmented. For example, uh, Entra ID is a solution from Microsoft whose 100% implementation and integration with Microsoft Azure is very much possible. But sometimes you don't have good knowledge of Microsoft Azure, or let's say you want to make sure that all these storage repositories or data repositories, which includes storage accounts, should be authenticated and authorized with Entra ID. But you won't be able to do that unless you have good knowledge of storage accounts. How will you protect a service using Entra ID, or how will you authenticate and authorize a service using Entra ID when you don't have good knowledge of that service? So that information is missing, and that's where knowledge is fragmented. So your SME was very much aware of this, and that's where they said that we want to start this training keeping in mind participants coming from varying background, and we want to focus on basics at the same time. However, we would not spend much time on basics, but we would ensure that we bring everyone on the same page. So that is where we'll spend some time in talking about networking service in Microsoft Azure, because Entra has great integration with networking services. I'm saying a couple of implementations that you do in Entra, they are very much dependent on network. If you do not have your network configured properly, you will not be able to configure Entra because it will be challenged by the networking configurations. Network will not allow it. Okay. Uh, then we will talk about storage services. So as I said, we have a lot that we need to cover in storage services. So we will cover about storage services. We'll move to compute services. We'll also understand the compute part. Other than integrating applications with Entra or configuring external applications to have single sign-on with Entra, you also need to understand the capabilities that it provides for Azure virtual machines. So you can also authenticate and authorize your Azure virtual machines with Entra ID. That's one of the use case when we cover compute service. So we'll understand how do we provision a virtual machine in Azure, how do we configure a virtual machine with the options which are available, how do we, up to certain extent, we look at auto scaling, load balancing. So that's what we are also going to do here in compute. So by the end of this training, this will not only make you eligible for SC-300 certificate, you can also go for AZ-104 certificate. which is Azure Administrator Certificate, which primarily focuses on uh, core Azure services, which is identity and access management, nothing but Entra ID, compute, network, storage, logging, monitoring, and auditing. That's what the focus of AZ-104 is all about. And you can also prepare for AZ-500 because this certification, this training also prepares you for AZ-500 plus some additional services that you need to learn because that's more on Azure Security Associate Certificate. So we'll talk about compute and then we'll move on to identity and access management space. And that is where we will start with Microsoft Entra ID. We'll start from the very basics of Entra. So participants who have good knowledge of Entra, it will be an opportunity for them to bridge the gap in their knowledge. We always have a gap in our knowledge, even though I have seen that, I have met with architects, enterprise architects, but I'm surprised by the fact to see that they lack strong fundamentals. When and with the lacking of strong fundamentals, it becomes difficult to create an enterprise architecture. When I ask you to devise a solution around a problem statement, you will need to have thorough knowledge of multiple technologies. With one technology, you will not be able to devise a solution, or you will be dependent on multiple resources, multiple stakeholders. So this will be an opportunity for you to bridge the gap that you have in your knowledge with respect to Microsoft Entra. So we'll talk about Entra, basic overview, concept, history. When Microsoft last year decided to change the name of Azure Active Directory to Entra, why did they do it? Where did Entra come from? What exactly does it mean? And what additional capabilities it brings on the table? How it is different from Azure Active Directory? Is it the same service with the change in name only, or it is really, give me, or it is really a different service that has additional capabilities? That's what we are going to talk about. So we'll look at the very basic aspects of Entra, which starts with configuring Entra ID, the basic configuration of Entra ID tenant, configuration of users and group, configuration of security defaults, basic configuration of Entra, and slowly and gradually we will move on to the intermediate and advanced configuration. By the end of this training, there would not be a single concept or single configuration of Entra that you will not be aware of. We will cover Entra in detail, and we will talk about identity and access management, and we will look into Azure. Okay, so before we talk about identity and access management, right after compute, this is not updated actually. We will look into the monitoring and logging also, because you will also need to understand the monitoring and logging aspects of Entra. Don't just learn this service because you want to implement that in your project, a project that has very limited aspect of this service. You may move to different projects. You may start to support different industry verticals. Today, you're supporting a customer in manufacturing industry. Their requirements are different from identity and access management perspective. Tomorrow, you may start to support a bank. Their requirements are different. So try and learn this service so that you can implement this service for any customer across any industry vertical. That's what our ultimate goal is. So we will look into the monitoring, logging, and governance, risk, and compliance aspects of Entra ID. That how do we manage Entra ID? How do we monitor Entra ID? How do we log Entra ID related events that occurs in Entra ID? And how do we understand the governance aspect of it? Then we will move into SC-300. Now from row number 164, it is SC-300. This is the exact syllabus of SC-300 that you see here, which is divided into 4 domains: implement and manage user identities, implement authentication and access management, plan and implement workload identities, plan and automate identity governance. And then you see some row items highlighted in yellow. These are some additional topics or some advanced topics that we will be covering in this training session also, because they are not part of SC-300. Or in SC-300, they have very limited aspect, very limited, or I would say basic understanding of these concepts are available as part of SC-300, but we'll do a deep dive here. I will share a couple of use cases with you, that use cases that I am currently working on at various customers that I support. And you can also probably think of implementing the same in your respective environment. So that's the entire syllabus that we have with respect to this training, which is more of a custom SC-300 syllabus that includes, that is a combination of AZ-104, uh, AZ-500, SC-300. That's the syllabus that we have. Now let's talk about, before we move on, let's talk about AZ-300 for a moment. Sorry, SC-300. Microsoft documentation has gone through multiple iterations, multiple improvement cycles, and today this is what it is. Microsoft has consolidated all the certifications on one documentation, on one URL here, the certification guide for all Microsoft certifications. So Microsoft has certifications for AI, which is artificial intelligence. It has certifications for Azure. It starts with AZ, all Azure certifications. Microsoft has data related certifications also. Microsoft has Dynamics certifications. Microsoft has certifications in Microsoft 365 space. Microsoft has certifications in Microsoft, Power, Microsoft, this service, which is Power Platform Service. Microsoft also has certifications in cybersecurity space. There used to be one certification. I'm saying until 2021, there was only one certification in Microsoft space, which was into security, that used to be AZ-500. So AZ-500, this is the certification which still continues. Microsoft has not deprecated it, but there is a plan to discontinue this certification. So this certification would basically talk about security implementation of Microsoft, or native security services that Microsoft offers from its cloud platform. And this certification typically covers services like identity and access management, which is Microsoft Entra ID. It covers a certificate like services like NSGs, USGs, sorry, NSGs, ESGs, UDR, VPN gateway, web application firewall, MPLS, WAN, express route from networking perspective. It covers services like Azure Policies, Encryption, Azure Key Vault, Azure Certificate Manager, all the services. And it also covers, services like, storage account, a shared access signature, access control list, Azure Disk Encryption API management. And it covers some services from security operations perspective, which is Microsoft Defender, and Azure Sentinel, which is now Microsoft Sentinel. So this is the certificate that Microsoft had for a long time, which primarily validates your knowledge around Microsoft security. And later on, Microsoft realized that this certification would not sufficient, because it Microsoft could not involve all the services here. And that's where Microsoft came up with these certificates, which is these guides, which is SC-100. So Microsoft has 5 certificates in cybersecurity domain. It starts with SC-900 basically, which is a fundamental certification. It is similar to AZ-900 or AI-900, which is security fundamentals. Here, Microsoft introduces various security services and its fundamental, configurations and implementation aspects. So it doesn't go into the details of this service, which is fundamentals. And then once you are done with this, then starts with SC-100. Now, as I said, cybersecurity has multiple domains. SC-100 is cybersecurity architect certification. Don't get misled by this word architect. SC-100 is not an architect certification. It only says cybersecurity architect, which basically means that if you do this certification, you will have knowledge with respect to designing and implementing a secure solution in Microsoft Azure with the help of using Microsoft Cloud Security Framework, Azure Architected Framework, Well Architected Framework, or Cloud Adoption Framework. That's what Microsoft talks about in SC-100. Then comes SC-200. SC-200 is more of NOC and SOC certification. So if you're part of SOC team, wherein your job is to pick up incidents from ITSM tools like Jira, ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, and resolve those incidents. Discover incidents or triage incidents, threat hunting, incident management. That's what SC-200 is. And SC-200 primarily focuses on Microsoft Defender XDR and Microsoft Sentinel products. That's what SC-200 is all about. Then comes SC-300. Now, while Microsoft came up with multiple certifications, they wanted to differentiate. So they wanted to differentiate identity and access management with rest of the domains. And Microsoft did. Microsoft started with SC-300 and they said that anything and everything related to Entra is part of this certification. And then Entra also has some weightage in all the certifications that it has. For example, SC-200 has Entra weightage. AZ-500 has Entra. 1/4 of questions comes from Entra ID or Azure Active Directory. But when it comes to SC-300, it is primarily for Microsoft Entra ID. So this certification is primarily for Microsoft Entra ID or anything and everything to do with identity and access management domain. Now, Microsoft Cloud is very dynamic, or I would say cloud is very dynamic. You must have realized it yourself also. If you don't just log into cloud portal, cloud UI, let's say for a couple of weeks, when you log in, you will see a lot of changes in the UI. You will, you will struggle to find a service that you used to see a couple of months ago because that service is now deprecated. You will see some additional services, some new names that you are primarily not aware of. And for some names, they would say preview as a suffix there. So something that is in preview. That's what Microsoft is all about or cloud is all about. It's very dynamic. It changes a lot. And so is the certifications. So today, if you're preparing for SC-300, the SC-300 certification was renewed on July 30th, which is a month ago, a month and a half ago, I would say. So they renewed the certification on July 30th, which basically means that they have added some additional pointers, some additional capabilities into the certification curriculum that Entra has brought on the table or Entra or was introduced into Entra service. And some capabilities, those are no more needed. They deprecated it. So if you are preparing for SC-300 certification today, the questions that you can expect in the certification exam will be based on the new syllabus, not old syllabus. Now let's look at the new syllabus. So first of all, who this certification is for. It says most questions cover features that are generally available. Exam may contain questions on preview features if those features are commonly used. So they also include, some questions on features which you may not see being utilized in your production environment because they are in preview. And in production, we don't ever implement anything which is in preview because it has a great chances of failure and no customer would allow. But you will have questions coming in the certification. So this exam is primarily meant for identity and access administrators, people who have been into identity and access management domain, people who understand what identity and access management is. For somebody who understands the difference between authentication and authorization, somebody who knows the difference between privileged access management and privileged identity management, somebody who knows what is identity lifecycle management, somebody who knows the difference between ADFS and single sign-on, somebody who can differentiate between OAuth, SCIM, or WS Federation. That's what this exam is for. So this exam is not for Microsoft professionals. This exam is for identity and access management professionals. However, the core focus service of this exam is Entra ID. So definitely you need to have in-depth understanding of Entra ID service. So that's what this exam is for. Now, it says that you should be familiar with Azure, Microsoft 365 services and workloads, Active Directory domain service. Why? Because this exam cuts across these services. If you don't have knowledge of these services, if you don't have knowledge of Azure, trust me, the exam will be very difficult because at the end of the day, you will implement Entra capabilities for Azure services, which are network, compute, storage, databases. So if you don't have knowledge of these services, you probably will not be able to clear the exam. And then you should also be familiar with PowerShell and KQL. Why are they saying that you should know PowerShell and KQL? Because when it comes to a couple of implementations, you use PowerShell and KQL. Because Entra also requires logging. It also requires analytics. And for that, some basic understanding of KQL is needed. KQL is similar to, I would say, for participants who don't understand what KQL is similar to structure query language SQL. It's a language, or it's a combination of prompts or keywords, or I would say syntax in programming language that you typically type to get certain information from logs. So that's what KQL is. So this exam now focuses on these four domains, which is implement and manage user identities. So in this domain, we primarily talk about configuring Microsoft Entra tenant, which is the basic configuration of Entra. So this exam will prepare you for configurations that you may not have access of in your current project and probably in future. But you will know from the scratch that if I'm the owner of an organization, or if I'm somebody who is in charge of Azure operations, what will be my first step? How do I configure Entra right from the beginning? Something that you may not have access to in a production environment because they already have Entra configured, but here you will understand the configuration from the beginning. So that's where participants who are already SC-300 certified, they will see a great value in this training, wherein they will have a great foundation and they will learn a lot of new concepts that they were primarily not aware of, or they never had access to. They could see those concepts in the portal, but when they click on it, it says access denied. But in this training, you will have access to it. You will have unlimited access to those capabilities, and you will configure it along with me. So configure and manage tenant. Then you will configure identities, which is users in groups, security groups, M365 groups. You will configure external identities also, like external identities that you want to invite to your tenant so that they can collaborate with you, they can support you, or you can share some documentation, some important data with them. So you will learn that part. You will understand hybrid identity part also, wherein uh, you work with customers who have existing LDAP service in place, and now they are moving into Microsoft Azure, or they are moving their applications and workloads to cloud, and they want a service that lets them manage those identities, those applications and workloads access for their existing identities. So that's your sports subdomain. So what we call it in Microsoft terminology, they are known as domains. So there are four domains in this exam, and those domains further have subdomains. So this is my subdomain, and these are topics. So we have a domain, subdomain, and topics. So we have four domains. They have further subdomains. Some domains have three, four subdomains. Some domains have five subdomains also. Then we have implementation, authentication, and access management. This is where you will understand single sign-on, app registration, self-service password reset, various authentication options like multi-factor authentication, passwordless authentication. You will understand conditional access, which is a great security service of Entra. You will understand Entra protection, that how Entra, based on UEBA or AI ML capabilities, can identify risky users and prevent them from getting compromised, as well as from doing any configuration changes to your environment. Then the third domain is plan and implement workload identities. This is a new capability that was introduced with Entra ID. So here you will understand what workload identities are, how do they work, what are managed identities, all that you will understand. You will understand, so you can see here Microsoft Defender for Cloud Ops is here. So you will also learn Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which is part of Microsoft 365. So they have added this capability also, so that you understand that if I have applications uh, that I have hosted in cloud, how do I protect those applications using a combination of Entra and Defender for Cloud Apps? And then in the end, the fourth domain is identity governance, wherein you will understand identity lifecycle management, access identity entitlement, access package, access reviews, catalogs, all those services along with privileged identity management, and then Entra permission management. So this is our SC-300 certification. A couple of capabilities Microsoft has not added here, which is Entra network access, which is Entra zero trust access. So Entra has some additional capabilities also that are not part of the certification. If you have interest in those capabilities and if we have time available, I will definitely cover those capabilities also. If I'm not able to do that, I will share some resources or session recordings from my previous training that will help you understand those capabilities also within Entra space, because you may have those capabilities, uh, you know, probably getting implemented in your current project, or in future you may, come across those capabilities and you may be required to work along those capabilities also. So this is about SC-300 certification, and we are going to cover each and every aspect. So take it this way, we're going to cover the entire certification word by word, line by line. All right, let's move on. Great. So Microsoft also gives you a lot of resources using which you can prepare for this certification. And take my words for it, they are very good crafted resources. You get a lot of good information from here. In fact, throughout this training, you will see me using these resources. Since it's Microsoft Entra training, SC-300 training, it's a product from Microsoft. So I will only be using OEM resources. I will only be taking reference from these resources. No third party resource I will be using throughout this training, because I don't trust third party resources. I will only trust OEM documentation, and there's a strong reason for it. In consulting world, if you share an OEM documentation with your client, and if something goes wrong, the blame goes to the vendor. But if you share a third party resource and if something gets wrong in the configuration, the blame comes to you. So never ever share any third party documentation with your client. Always share OEM documentation so that you are well protected, because you have not developed this technology at home. That's not your intellectual property. That's not the intellectual property of your employer. It's a third party solution, and your employer is more working as a service provider, as a managed service provider, or as a managed security service provider, helping clients to implement this technology. Is everyone with me on this? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes, Raghu.
Yes, Raghu, yes.
Great. All right. So then you will see what they used to include, in the previous, in the old syllabus. So we'll not go through it. It is not needed. Anything which is old is not needed anymore in cloud. Cloud is all about uh, being relevant, being up to the mark, and being progressive. That's what cloud is all about. And trust me, when you are in cloud domain, you become multi-talented. So while working with Azure, AWS, and GCP cloud, I got the opportunity to learn a lot of technology that I never thought of learning. I'm saying if I had been into on-premises domain, on-premises technology, I would never ever have learned the networking application. Today I know some coding. Today I know Terraform. Today I know PowerShell. Today I know AI ML. Today I know Copilot. Different types of AI. It's all because of cloud. Cloud is all about learning and using multiple technologies. So you will also get a glimpse of it. So that's all about this exam. You will also have practice assessment available here. Is everyone back?
Yes, Abhay.
Okay, let's get
Yes,
started.
yes.
Yes.
All right, so I'll use my presentation, which I use for my Azure Fundamentals and Administration training here, to talk about some basic concepts of cloud, which we need to cover. However, we will not spend much time here, as I said, because I would expect you to do as a prerequisite. Great. Okay. Uh, so one thing that we all need to understand, I would say, technology is about having a strong fundamental or strong conceptual understanding of various aspects of technology. That is very important. When it comes to cloud, what I experience today, that most of the corporates, what they do, they put freshers, or I would say campus graduates, into cloud projects, and they teach cloud during the, I'm say, while on the job. And they also start working in cloud domain and they start to deliver the projects. But then there is a drawback to this approach. The drawback to this approach is that they don't have strong fundamentals into the cloud. Why? Because prior to cloud, there was an operating system, there was a network, there was virtualization, there were databases, there were storage concepts, some bit of security that you should be aware of, that you should have experience with. And that's where you navigate to cloud, because cloud is a combination of all of it, right? Microsoft Azure has its data center spread across the world, across multiple geographies, and then they are managing those data centers, they're securing those data centers, they let you pick and choose services, deploy your workload and applications into those data centers, and we call them cloud services. So you should have strong background into some core concepts, core technology concepts. And when I say what are those core technology concepts are, this is the fundamental that everyone should know. I'm not against corporates putting, freshers into cloud domain. What I'm against is that they don't provide them sufficient training or sufficient base, and since they lack that base, they're not able to do better in the subsequent years in their career. So when it comes to cloud, okay, let me increase the font. To the prerequisites for cloud, you should have strong fundamentals in core technology concepts, which starts with hardware and software, I would say. So you should have good knowledge of hardware and software. You don't deal with hardware in cloud. Why? Because hardware is managed by the cloud service provider. You deal with software. Azure portal is nothing but a software or an application. So you should know the difference between software and application at the same time, right? You should have basic to intermediate level understanding of network also. If you don't know the difference between public, private IPs, if you don't know the IP address ranges and IP address classes, if you don't know subnetting, if you don't know what access control list is, if you don't know what is an IPsec VPN tunnel, what is a VPN tunnel, what is a gateway, then it will become different, very difficult to understand concepts, because that is very much important. So you should have good knowledge of networking also. Then you should have good knowledge of storage. When I say storage, you should know what are different storage repositories, what's the difference between STT and SSD, what is the difference between SAN, NAS, and DAS, how do we virtualize the storage. So you should have that level of knowledge. You should know about virtualization. When I say virtualization, cloud is all about virtualization. Networking and virtualization is the backbone of cloud computing. Without network and virtualization technology, cloud is not possible. You don't provide access to a hardware. You provide access to a virtualized hardware to customer. When you build a virtual machine in cloud, you're building that virtual machine on the top of a hardware, but that hardware is virtualized using a virtualization software, which is known as type 1 or type 2 hypervisor. Or in Microsoft Azure, it is Hyper-V. They use Hyper-V or their native virtualization technology. So you should know what virtualization is, what are different types of virtualization. Now, it's not only hardware virtualization. Today we virtualize an application. You must have heard about desktop and application, virtualization. Citrix is there, Azure Virtual Desktop is there, Amazon Web, Workspaces is there. You have application virtualization available. You have desktop virtualization, storage virtualization is there, server virtualization is there, network virtualization is there. So you should have good understanding of virtualization. and then some basic understanding of security. This is also needed. So once you have this knowledge, then you move into the cloud, and then cloud becomes easier for you. You're able to understand cloud concepts well. You're able to manage cloud also. Your employer sometimes makes you good in one domain, but that is not good for your career. Because when you look outside, you look at professionals having all round knowledge across multiple domains. And that sometimes reduces your growth opportunities at the same time or options outside of your current employer. So that is very important that you have good knowledge of core concepts. And these are the core concepts. Now, so virtualization address this, cost concept. As Shiva has rightly said, if you look into the history of computers or history of technology, computers have gone through multiple generations. We are in generation 5 now. There used to be first generation, second generation, third generation. There was a time when computing resources were too expensive. Not all businesses would afford them. And if you purchase a hardware, it would only allow one application. I'm saying if you purchase a server with a server operating system, let's say Windows NT or Windows 2000, I'm talking about some 20 years ago, it would not allow to run multiple applications on it. You can only run one application at a time. So you end up purchasing multiple servers. Virtualization actually addressed that scenario. It created a bifurcation, or it created a virtual layer on the top of that hardware, and it created multiple virtual machines of varying operating systems, and each application running on those machines thinks that I'm the only application running on this hardware. And that's what it addressed. So that was virtualization. Now, I'm not getting into the depth of it. If you want to get into the depth of any of these concepts, I can share resources with you and you can go through it. I have both presentations as well as recorded videos for the same, so I can share it with you. Let's talk about basic understanding of security. Now, when it comes to cloud, uh, cloud is somebody else's data center. Can somebody tell me how many data centers Microsoft Azure has? Any approximate idea? Approximate numbers, not the exact number I'm looking for. Nobody knows the exact number. Even I don't know. Yes, Suraj,
Around
you're saying
150.
something? 150 data centers. Okay. How many regions? Okay.
If you are talking about country specific,
Yeah, regions. No, country is different. Region is different.
okay,
So
50,
geography
50,
versus
50,
regions
50,
versus data center.
yeah.
Okay, great. History, very important. If you aspire to become an architect in the long run, most of you are working at lead or consultant position as we speak. But if you aspire to become an architect, you should have strong fundamental as well as knowledge of history is very important. Not history in terms of Indian history, history of technology. So when it comes to any technology, you should know the history of it, history and current and the present. That is very important. Future, nobody is bothered about. History and present is very important. So when it comes to the history, you need to know the cloud history, you need to know the history of Microsoft Azure, and you need to know the present of Microsoft Azure. When I say present, I'm basically talking about global infra. That what's my global infra of Microsoft Azure? Why do I need it? When I'm working as an Entra ID professional, why do I need this information? You need it very much because you will be asking questions to your customer that in all, tell me the regions or data centers or geographies where you have your applications hosted in, so that you can think of appropriate design for your Entra implementation, right? So that is very important. The basics are very important here. At the end of the day, Entra is going to authenticate and authorize identities for various applications and workload spread across multiple regions and geographies in Azure. So if you don't have good understanding of these regions, how will you configure the authentication and authorization? What about disaster recovery? If you don't have good conceptual knowledge of how DR happens in Azure, your Entra implementation is half-baked, right? So that's very important. So before we get into this, let's understand the on-premises infrastructure challenges that led to the birth of cloud, right? So tell me some of the challenges of on-premises infrastructure that comes to your mind. Forget about cloud for a moment, or think of the value proposition that cloud brings on the table, and that used to be the infrastructure challenges. What do you think? I'm open to input. On-premise infra challenges.
The difficulty in maintenance,
Uh,
maintaining the number of, even if it is a servers, if the number of servers getting increased, it will be difficult for managing them.
okay, maintenance overhead. That's one of the challenge. Now, at the same time, when somebody talks about a challenge, I also want to hear the solution. So, Anusha, you said that maintenance overhead is there in on-premises. Uh, how do you think it is not there in cloud? And if yes, it is not there in cloud, then what exactly are we doing to address this scenario in cloud? To the best of your
Okay.
knowledge.
Yeah, I would say it is the introduction of this virtualization. If the number of servers are increased, the virtualization will help us to decrease the number of servers here. Like using
Okay.
a single host, a single physical host, we can use multiple virtual servers.
But Anusha, virtualization is not a new technology. It has been there for a long time, even before the birth of cloud. Even today, businesses use VMware, Citrix, Hyper-V virtualized systems at on-premises also. So they already have private cloud built using virtualization, and cloud is another example of virtualization, right?
Yeah.
Maintenance overhead is less in cloud because of automation. Cloud supports a
Mhm.
lot of automation. That's why it reduces the maintenance overhead, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yes.
virtualization definitely is another aspect of it, because you are, instead of managing 100 servers for 100 applications, you are managing one server that is hosting 100 applications, right?
Yes.
However, that increases single point of failure. If I have 100 applications on the same server versus one application on each server, think of single point of failure. What if my hardware fails? What if that system fails? I will lose access to 100 applications. There will be a
Mm.
huge outcry everywhere. Your customer would kill you for it if that ever happens. So you need to basically address this single point of failure, and that is where your DR comes into the picture. So that's where you need to know DR. Now, when it comes
Disaster
to DR,
recovery.
now when it comes to the DR, see, at, at a time when you have these 100 systems, 100 applications configured into the system using Microsoft Entra ID for authentication and authorization, or with Microsoft Entra ID as an identity provider, configuring the allowing the identities to authenticate and authorize to these 100 applications. What if these applications fail over to a different site? Definitely the URL will change, the application IP will change, properties will change. How will Microsoft Entra ID be able to continue authenticating users to these applications at DR site? That is the question that you will ask yourself as an IAM professional. But the answer of this question you will only find once you have good understanding of DR capabilities. That is why core services knowledge is very important in cloud, whether you are into IAM, whether you are into network, whether you are into security, whether you are into databases. It's very important. Okay, great. Next participant, any other challenge that you can think of that we have in on-premises
Cost.
infrastructure?
Yeah.
Cost. Okay, cost is high or low? What?
It's high for on premises. If we are using cloud, then we have to pay as per the resource.
Okay, pay as you go. So
Yeah.
when it comes to cost, the right terminology in cloud that we use is, I would say, move from CapEx to OpEx. That's the right terminology.
Okay.
So you also need to start learning the right terminologies depending on who you are communicating with. If the end person that you're talking to is a technical person, you will talk in technical language. If the end person is a non-technical person like a manager or a director or a or CEO, CTO, then you will talk in a language. Communication is all about making sure that the other person understands what you are communicating, not the choice of language that you pick up, right? So
Okay.
it is move from capex to opex, which basically means that in on premises we have capital expenditure, right? So
Mhm.
if I need to host an application in my on premises data center, and if it requires a server, I would need to purchase a server and I would need to pay 100% in advance. And then I would need to wait for a couple of weeks to have that server delivered at my office. Then I would need some expert to deploy that server, configure the initial, do the initial configuration before I'm ready to host my application. That's what CapEx. OpEx basically means all you need to go do is sign up to Microsoft Azure, navigate to build the base infrastructure, which is build a network, and then navigate to compute, provision a virtual machine with your choice of operating system, with your hardware configuration that you need, and host your application. And if you use that server for 10 minutes, you only pay for 10 minutes. That's what OPEX, operational expenditure, which is in other terminologies, OPEX is also known as pay as you go, in short, which means you're paying for what you are using. There is no upfront commitment that you are making. That's what cost. Great. Thank you, Anusha. Moving on. Next, what other challenges do you think could be there in cloud? Any other participant? Yes, Reshma?
If there is like an increase in business, then you know when the traffic increases to these
Hmm.
servers, no, there
Okay.
could be a chance of yeah, uh, like elasticity.
Unpredictable
Yeah,
demand, right?
yeah.
So this is, which you're right. I'm saying the right terminology for is you are frozen in time. These are the cloud terminologies that I'm using in brackets side by side. Frozen in time. Frozen in time basically means that today I purchased 10 servers and latest equipment, latest hardware, latest operating system, everything is latest. A year later, it will not remain latest. In 1 year from today, there will be additional advancements, additional capabilities will be introduced, but my system will not have that capability because I am frozen in time. However, in cloud, if there is a new technology that comes into the picture, I can quickly upgrade to that technologies. I can quickly resize my virtual machine to another size with latest hardware, to another configuration with latest capability. I can do that on the fly. In on-premises, I can't do that. If all of a sudden my application experiences a high user traffic, my existing hardware would not be able to accommodate that traffic and it would fail and my application will go down. This happens a lot, but in cloud, it will not happen because I will have auto scaling configured. I will have, automation configured, which is known as auto scaling, that will increase my hardware resources to accommodate sudden spike in demand, right? That is known as scaling, scalability. So scalability is the feature that we are talking about here from cloud perspective that basically address this concept, address this problem statement. Anything else? I'm glad that I'm getting inputs and those are very valid inputs. Yes.
Security is also a concern in on-premises infra challenge.
Okay. Yeah. Pallavi, you brought a very uh, debated subject. So security, as we speak today, is a debatable topic even today. Some people still feel that in on-premises infrastructure, security is much better as compared to cloud. And if you ask me, I can give you 1,000 reasons to go into cloud when it comes to security, because I know that security is much better in cloud as compared to on-premises infrastructure. I can give you one example. For example, if I specifically talk about Microsoft Azure, Microsoft has more than 3,000 full-time employees working day night round the clock protecting Microsoft cloud assets or protecting customers who are hosting their workloads and applications in cloud. And Microsoft is investing over $1 billion every year on security. Now tell me, can you think of a company, any large organization having the same number of employees with the same budget for their security?
No.
That's the answer. So security is better in cloud, right? However, the challenge with cloud security is that lack of knowledge or partial knowledge about cloud security solutions leads to misconfiguration. Misconfiguration leads to vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are exploited and security incidents occur in cloud. And that's where businesses says that cloud is not secure. But cloud is more secure than an on-premises deployment would be. So security is much better in cloud, that you will understand from Entra perspective itself. We will deploy Entra, we will deploy configurations, and I would invite you to exploit or create vulnerabilities, and you will see you will not be able to do that, right? For example, I will grant you access to a resource, a certain level of access, and then I will invite you to corrupt that resource. You will not be able to do that because your access is defined, it's time bound, right? It's controlled. That's about security is. Okay, great. Any other point? We have almost covered everything, but still one or two pointers we have not covered.
Server patch upgrades or any kind of server upgradations where I don't need the teams to validate their applications. And I don't have to worry about my RAM going out of hand or my storage going out of hand because of auto scalability.
Yep, you're right. That's another benefit of cloud, or that was one of the challenge in on-premises when it comes to update and upgrades. In on-premises, you will need to manually update these software and hardware both, which is firmware upgrade as well as software update and upgrades. However, in cloud, it is both manual as well as automated, depending on how do you configure cloud systems. So I can provision a virtual machine, and you will see it yourself when we get into virtual machine, provisioning. You will see that there will be an option that allows you to automatically upgrade and update the operating system of your virtual machine. Or you can choose to do it manually based on your requirements. So it is both manual and automated. However, in on-premises, it is always manual. That's one thing. Scalability, the very valid point that you mentioned, that it supports auto scaling. So you don't need to bother about increasing the CPU and memory resources to your application based on the user traffic. It's all automated. So yes, updates, upgrade, it's automated. Great. Anything else? Anything that comes to your mind?
Accessibility.
Accessibility. Kindly elaborate.
I think so in cloud we can access anywhere, right? So in on-premise it is a particular mission we have to do it.
Okay, great. So accessibility basically means that cloud is accessible from anywhere on any device, right? You can access cloud environment from anywhere in the world, from any network or on any device. You can even access your Azure portal from your mobile phone, from your tablet, from your laptop, from your desktop, from your server. It's accessible. However, accessibility of on-premises infrastructure is only physically from that infrastructure. It may not be accessible from anywhere. So that's the another thing. Great. So these are my challenges when it comes to cloud, when it comes to on-premises infrastructure, and cloud exactly is able to address these challenges, right? So on-premises infrastructure, in contrast with cloud services, there are multiple challenges that it provides. And those challenges, these challenges on-premise infrastructure are hybrid complexity, cost management, security and compliance, data transfer and latency, infrastructure maintenance. So you will be glad to know that you have exactly provided the same information even before you had access to this presentation. So that's like a teamwork. Great. So these are the challenges when it comes to on-premises infrastructure. Now, one challenge that we did not talk about is data transfer and latency. See, when it comes to data transfer and latency, uh, when it comes to on-premises data center, you will always have limited bandwidth depending on the internet service provider that you are taking, internet services from. Now, in most of the offices, we have, for the purpose of high availability, fault tolerance, or avoiding single point of failure, we have typically internet coming from two service providers in your office. So you have one primary line and one failover line. But what is the bandwidth? It will always be limited. Like you will not go beyond, I would say at home, we have connections like 100 Mbps, 200 Mbps, 300 Mbps. And in offices, we have connections like 1 Gbps, 2 Gbps, that's it. Not beyond that. Do you know the connection strength at your office, wheresoever you work? Whether it is 1 gigabit per second, whether it is 2 gigabit per second, or 300, 500 Mbps. Okay, you don't know. But can somebody tell me the average connection strength or bandwidth that you have in the cloud or in Microsoft Azure? What is that bandwidth that Azure provides? Any idea? Any rough idea, guys? Any wild guess that you can do? Bandwidth that cloud provides.
100 Gbps maybe?
Yep, you actually said it right. It's 100 gigabit per second. Imagine downloading a file. So last time, the last time when I downloaded uh, SQL Server installation, SQL Enterprise installation, the size was around 10 Gbps. 10 gigabyte. 10 GB was the file size, and it took less than 1 minute to download. 10 GB of data in less than 1 minute. Try to download 10 GB of data on your local system and you will realize how much time it takes. It may probably take a couple of minutes to an hour. That's the bandwidth that you get in cloud. So when you move data from one cloud region to another, it's very quick. That's the benefit that we get in cloud. Okay. So cloud adoption use cases you need to be aware of. Now, when it comes to cloud adoption use cases, there was a time, I still remember in 2010, when I started with Windows Azure, I used to work for HCL Infosystems, which is pan-India division of HCL Technology. Most of the government organizations, they would not use cloud. Most of the banks, they would not use cloud. Only private players were interested in using cloud services. Do you know the reason why government and banks were not interested in using cloud? Can somebody tell me? Any guess?
Due to the security purpose and the personalized information
Yeah.
of the customers.
Due to the security, that was one of the concern, and the data protection. Data privacy. See, I would say banks are the last institution or last industry to adopt a technology after it has been in existence for at least 5 to 10 years. That's how banks work. They don't go, even today, if you go to a bank, you will still see they would have systems running with Windows XP. Even if you go to a bank ATM, some bank ATMs are still using embedded XP operating system in the backend. And you can see that if the ATM is not working, If the ATM is malfunctioning, sometimes you will see the operating system in the backend, and it is Windows XP till date. Imagine you're using Windows 10 and 11, and they're using Windows XP. Resistance, that is known as resistance to develop, resistance to technology, or they are just doing good. They don't want anything to corrupt their system. But today, in 2024, most of the banks across the world, they are using cloud. All the scheduled banks in India, private and government, they are using cloud in one way or another. All the private banks in India that you know, they are on cloud as we speak. They have their mission critical applications hosted in cloud. So cloud has great use cases today as we speak. Most of the customers are using cloud because now that they have understood that cloud is as secure or more secure than their on-premises deployments could be. So healthcare, finance, retail, education, media, government, telecommunications, they all are using cloud. Okay. Then comes cloud assessment and migration journey. Now, when it comes to cloud assessment and migration journey, imagine yourself as an entrepreneur and you have a business for which IT systems are hosted in an on-premises data center. The data center could be a rented facility, or it could be your own data center. I'm saying your owned data center. When you decide to move to the cloud, how do you move to the cloud? We are not getting into the depth of this topic. We are just trying to build the base so that everyone is on the same page. So at a very high level, when you move to the cloud, the first thing that you will do is assessment. Assessment basically means you would want to identify what percentage of my environment, which comprises of servers, applications, virtual machines, databases, is good to go in cloud, is ready for migration to cloud. What percentage of my environment needs some remediation before it is moved to cloud? And what percentage of my environment is not compatible with cloud at all? That's what assessment is all about, to identify how much of it out I can move with minimal or no efforts. That's what assessment is. After the assessment is complete, we start to migrate. If there are 100 applications that we need to migrate, we will migrate them in phases based on application criticality, business requirements, and other factors. That's what migration is all about. When it comes to Microsoft Azure, the service that Microsoft Azure provides for assessment and migration is known as Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is the service that has both assessment and migration capabilities. So using this service, you can migrate and you can do the assessment as well as migration to Microsoft Azure. Your source environment could be an on-premises data center, on-premises DC. It could be a colo. Colo means a rented out facility. It could be other cloud also, like AWS, GCP. It could be a private cloud also, etc. And what will be your destination, guys? What is the destination here? If the source is this, then what is the destination? Microsoft Azure, right? Destination is Microsoft Azure. So using Azure Migrate, I can migrate my applications and workload from my on-premises data center, from a co-location facility, from other cloud service providers like AWS, GCP, Alibaba, Oracle, IBM, Accenture, any private cloud, and my destination would be Azure to Microsoft Azure. That's the service that we use in cloud. And these are my phases, or this is how the journey looks like. It starts with assessment, some planning and strategy, migration preparation, execution, and then post migration go live. So that's what my journey is. Okay. Give me a moment here. Next thing is that you need to be aware of is, give me a moment. So since I'm not covering these concepts in detail because we just need to introduce them. But if you want to understand that in detail, these concepts that I'm covering here, I've already shared it with you. I delivered a training on AZ-104 when I covered these concepts in detail. So if you are basically new to cloud and you want to understand these concepts in detail, I'll share the URL that you can probably watch in your spare time. Give me a moment here. Let's just continue with this. Then comes two things that you need to understand. One is cloud service delivery models and cloud deployment models. Okay. Can somebody tell me the deployment models in the cloud? What are my deployment models in the cloud? Or have you heard this terminology in the past? Cloud deployment models? Anyone? That's where the basics comes into the picture. So let's do it. So cloud deployment model basically means that, so let's understand this journey. We are doing this journey wherein first we try to understand on-premises challenges. We all were on the same page when it comes to on-premises infrastructure challenges. And then I assumed yourself to be an entrepreneur with, a business which is currently configured or for which IT assets are configured in on-premises. Then you did the assessment and you identified that, okay, 70% of my infrastructure is ready to go to cloud, right? Now, once you have made this decision, then comes the migration. So what are my deployment model basically means that in how many ways I can use cloud, or what are different types of cloud which is available. So when it comes to different types of cloud, we have primarily four deployment models. We have public, private, hybrid, and community. These are the four types of deployment models in the cloud. Can somebody tell me the difference between public and private cloud? As the name suggests, I'm saying any rough idea. What's the difference between public and private cloud? Okay, so let's talk about it. So when it comes to public cloud basically means that it is an infrastructure. It could be a platform or it could be an application service which is meant for everyone's consumption. Anyone can sign up to that service and start to consume that service. That's the definition of public cloud, right? Now, the example of public cloud is Microsoft Azure. Is Microsoft Azure only available to government, or only available to banking sector, or only available to manufacturing industry, or only available to a business? Can an individual not use Microsoft Azure? Yes, an individual can use. It is available for everyone. So Microsoft Azure is a public cloud. What other public clouds are? Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, IBM Cloud. There are multiple public cloud service providers. We probably know 5 or 6, but there are more than 200 plus global and regional public cloud service providers. It's control as data center. Then they change it to Cloud 4C. That's the company name.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
have great presence in Middle East. In fact, in Middle East, they are the largest public cloud service provider as we speak today. But Not many people are aware of it. Why? Because they are not Azure, AWS, and GCP. When it comes to cloud, the only name that comes to my mind is Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud. We don't think beyond it, but there are players. Okay. Can somebody tell me the cloud that government of India has built? Government of India has also built a cloud. Do you know the name of that cloud? Of Government of India for cloud service providers. Okay, who is the governing body for banks in India? For all the banks in India, which is the governing body?
RBI.
RBI. Great. For share market?
SEBI, I think.
SEBI. For insurance?
IRDA.
Great. And then for cloud service provider? You should know this, right? So find out who is the governing body for cloud service providers in India. See, we can use Microsoft Azure in India now. Azure has a data center in Mumbai. It has one region in southern part of India, which is Chennai. It has one region in Pune also. And Azure is building one region in Hyderabad. So there has to be a governing body who will put policies and procedures that Microsoft must adhere if they want to do business in India. So find out which is the governing body for cloud service providers in India, and what is the name of our homegrown cloud product. Okay, great. So then comes private cloud. Now, what is private cloud here? Private cloud is not a new term. Give me a moment. All right. Then comes private cloud. So private cloud is not a new term. In fact, most of the organizations, they have their own private cloud. Private cloud basically means that it's a privately owned facility which is only accessible to the employees of an organization or to a limited entity. That's what private cloud is. Now, your employer also has a private cloud, and you have hosted, and I'm aware of it because I have delivered multiple trainings for your employer in the past also. And you are hosting that private cloud in your data centers, in your on-premises data centers. So you have a big facility in Hyderabad, you have big facility in Gurgaon also, where you have built your private cloud data centers. And some applications are accessible from that private cloud only. And those applications are accessible to the employees only. That's what private cloud is. So that's the difference. Private cloud is built for the single organization. Then comes the third type of cloud, which is hybrid cloud. Now, there is no cloud with the name hybrid. Remember this. Some people are confused with this terminology. There is no separate cloud with the name hybrid. Hybrid basically means that it's an arrangement, it's a technology that binds public and private cloud together so that you can consume the services from both the cloud. For example, let's say you have a mission critical application. Let's say you are in the business, you are an e-commerce business. And what is more important for you is your product catalog and your customer database. And product catalog and customer database is stored into your database. I'm saying your customer account information and your product catalog, which contains all the products that you sell through your portal, is hosted into your database. And you want to use cloud. So what you can do, you can put your front end and middle tier into public cloud so that it is easily accessible to everyone, and your backend tier, which is your database, into your private cloud. And this arrangement will be known as hybrid cloud because you are consuming resources from both the services, from both the clouds. That's what hybrid is. So never ever think when somebody says that I'm using hybrid cloud that they have a separate arrangement. It basically means that they have not they are using a combination of public and private, or they have some resources on premises, some resources in cloud, and those resources have the capability to communicate, to share resources. That's what hybrid is all about. That's hybrid. Then comes the fourth type of deployment model. The fourth, which is known as community cloud. Community cloud basically means, so basically, let's take this example. All the banks, they have some common concerns or they have common requirements like security. They want their environment to be secure. All the manufacturing industry, they have a common requirement. They want to avoid natural and man-made calamities. If you go to a manufacturing unit, you will see a huge plant. Any automobile manufacturing unit or clothing manufacturing unit or chemical manufacturing unit, you will see a huge plant. And their more emphasis is on security. They want to avoid any disaster because that disaster can entirely disrupt the operation, can result in losses of human lives. If you, I don't know whether you remember that carbide incident that happened a couple of years ago, some 20, 30 years ago in Madhya Pradesh, that there was this company wherein a gas leak killed thousands of people who were living nearby, not in the premises of that manufacturing unit, that chemical factory, but in the 10 kilometers of radius. It killed many people. In fact, the trains that were passing by, from the trains which was they were passing from nearby, they also got impacted. A lot of people in those trains also got killed because of that release of gases. So they have some common concern. Now, what those common concerns are? They are security, compliance, and jurisdiction. So if there are multiple companies or a specific segment and with common concerns, if they want to build a cloud for themselves, which they will only use, no one else will use, that type of cloud will be known as community cloud. The example is Salesforce Cloud. It's a community cloud. So a community comes together, join hands, build a cloud for themselves, or get a cloud built for themselves by an expert, and they use it. That is known as community cloud. So these are my 4 cloud deployment models. Now, I have explained them in detail in the videos that I've shared in the chat window if you want to understand in depth. So this is my deployment model. Later on in the same, so this presentation is being used in the recordings. So here you can see the details of the public cloud characteristics, the examples, then advantages and disadvantages of public cloud. Similarly, subsequent slides show you private cloud, advantages and disadvantages, then hybrid cloud, advantages, disadvantages, and some additional information. Let's talk about the next concept, which is after cloud service delivery, after cloud deployment models, then comes cloud service delivery models. So there are 3 main delivery models that exist as we speak, which is IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Can somebody who has worked in Microsoft Azure for a couple of years, tell me the difference between IaaS and PaaS?
So in infrastructure as a service, the entire infrastructure will be managed by the cloud. We don't need to be worried about the infrastructure, what will be the OS and all details. We only need to be focused on our data.
In infrastructure as a service, okay?
Yeah.
Then what's platform as a service?
Platform as a service will be an example like an Outlook. How the Outlook is working. Did I?
You
I
actually
think I'm
got
confused
mixed up,
right
Anusha.
now. Yeah. It got mixed
you
up.
gave the example of platform as a service in the very beginning.
Sorry.
Yeah.
IaaS
okay. What's infrastructure as a service now?
Maybe we have to manage the infrastructure. The cloud only deals with the data, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Any other participant?
Infrastructure is access of resource such as virtual machines and virtual storage, and this platform is for deployment, development purpose tools.
But you can also use infrastructure for development purpose.
Okay.
It's not like that. You're right. You're partially right, but we can also use infrastructure for development. Any other participant?
The
Okay.
operating system and such the underlying hardware and things would be the one that in IaaS that the cloud service provider would provide. The rest of the operating system, the networking, such configurations and things has to be taken care by the consumer along with
Okay.
the development and deployment.
Great. All right, let's be on the same page. Let's all of us be on the same page. I will explain these service delivery models with this presentation. And by the time I'm done with this presentation, you will have good understanding of it. Okay. So let's start with on-premises. Is the presentation visible to everyone?
Yes.
Great. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to build a traditional on-premises infrastructure from technology stack perspective. That if I have an on-premises data center, this is how it looks like from technology perspective, right? So when you build a data center, what do you do? The very first thing that you do is to lay out the cables. You build the network. After that, you get storage and servers. You arrange them in the form of a rack or blade or tower. And there are three types of servers: rack servers, blade servers, and tower servers. So in data centers, the most common or most popular type is rack. So you basically deploy racks, and inside the racks, you basically deploy the servers and storage. Then you deploy a virtualization layer: VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix. And with the help of this virtualization layer, you try to virtualize your server, your storage, and your network. So you virtualize all of this so that you can build virtual machines. So you build virtual machines, and those virtual machines are having operating system. They can have an operating system from Windows, from Linux, from other operating system providers. And then virtual machine has a middleware. Middleware means a middleware through which you are communicating with the cloud. So that middleware here is basically your portal through which you are communicating with the virtual machine. Or in the application example, the middleware could be Informatica, JBoss, Java. That's middleware. That machine that you are building here, it has a runtime. Runtime basically means either this machine is either this machine is turned on, or it is switched off, or it is restarting. Now this machine that you have built has some data on it in the form of storage, because you've done the storage virtualization. So this machine will have some storage attached to it, and that storage will contain the data. And what exactly this machine is hosting is nothing but an application, right? That's how an on-premises data center infrastructure looks like. Is everyone with me on this? Yes, no, maybe? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move into the cloud, and let's understand the cloud service models. So the first model that we have in cloud, any question from anybody?
Yeah, could you please
Yeah.
just explain again on the same thing?
Okay. So what I'm trying to do here is, before I explain the cloud service delivery models, I'm trying us to be on the same page with respect to how an on-premises data center looks like from technology stack perspective. We all are technical people, so we are trying to understand the technical components in a data center, right? So these are the technical components, which means if you are building a data center, the first thing that you do is to build your network. So you lay out network cables. Even before you bring furnitures or equipments, you lay out the cables. You will put the cable layout. So you will put cables, and then you will deploy racks. Inside the rack, you will put your servers and storage. When I say server, it basically means your CPU and memory. And when I say storage, it basically means drives, storage drives, SSDs, magnetic disk. That's what. Now, this is your hardware. You don't use hardware, because if you use hardware, then the cost will be too high. So what you do, since you are in 2024, you will deploy virtualization. You will use VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix, and with the help of VMware, Hyper-V, and Citrix, you will virtualize your servers, storage, and networking, and the end result of this will be a virtual machine. A virtual machine that is hosting an operating system. It could be Windows, Linux, or anything else. And that virtual machine has a middleware through which you are communicating with that virtual machine, which in this case is Azure Portal or PowerShell or CLI or SDK. And then the virtual machine has a runtime. That server is either running or stopped. That server has some data stored on it in the form of some disk, and that server is hosting an application. That's how a traditional on-premises infrastructure looks like. At the end of the day, you have servers in data center. But how those servers are built? They are built using virtualization layer. They are based on the hardware. They are connected or they are communicating with networking. And how are you communicating or accessing those servers? Through a middleware, through some UI, some console. And those servers are always up and running in the data center. So that's how a traditional data center looks like. Okay. Now, I am a consultant and you are my client and you are that entrepreneur who is planning to move to cloud. And you have some use cases or some pain points in mind because of which you wanted to move to the cloud, right? So one of the pain point was administration overhead. That was one of the pain point that you had in mind, which is maintenance overhead, right? So I'm suggesting that, you know what, in cloud, we can do this. Okay, this animation is broken somehow. Let's not look at this area for a moment. Let's focus on this infrastructure as a service. So when it comes to infrastructure as a service, give me a minute. Okay, so when we are moving into the cloud, we have first service delivery model as infrastructure as a service. In this model, what happens? The technology stack remains the same because at the end of the day, cloud is nothing but a physical data center managed, owned, and maintained by a provider who is known as cloud service provider. And the example is Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, and GCP. So when it comes to infrastructure as a service, the data center remains the same. Now the difference that it brings on the table is that the first four layers, network, storage, server, and virtualization, they are managed by vendor. Who is the vendor here? Who is the vendor?
Amazon, Microsoft.
You see them on the right. These are the vendors. So they manage the network, storage, server, and virtualization. And you basically means customer. Customer is responsible for managing the operating system, which basically means customer can pick and choose an operating system of their choice, a version of their choice, and then customer is responsible for updating it, upgrading it, putting in place an entire malware solution, making sure that the patches are up to date, all that. Customer is responsible for middleware. Middleware is Azure portal. So you're responsible for it. How do you want to use it? Runtime, whether you want this operating system or VM, up and running all the time, or you want to shut it down, or you want to manage it yourself. Data you are responsible for, and application you are responsible for. This is known as infrastructure as a service, wherein the customer is responsible for managing the infrastructure and the underlying hardware is the responsibility of the service provider. That's what infrastructure as a service is, in short, IaaS. The second, now, since I was helping you, now you will say, Raghuveer, the reason I am moving into the cloud is that I want to reduce this administrative overhead. You're asking me to update the operating system. You're asking me to patch it. You're asking me to put the antivirus and manage it. I don't want to do that. I want a service wherein I only focus on my core business, my application and data. Rest you manage it for me. Otherwise, I will terminate my plan to move to cloud. I will not move to cloud. So here's the solution. Second is platform as a service. Now here you need to manage your application and data. The service provider, the vendor will also take care of operating system, which means you just tell them that I need a virtual machine with 2 CPU cores, 8 GB RAM with Windows 2019 data center operating system. And cloud will manage the patching, availability, all cloud will manage. All you need to manage is your data and application, because that cloud cannot manage for you, because cloud service provider doesn't know how do you want to protect your data, what data is important for you, what data is not important, or what your application is, how it is built, what is the code. They don't understand and they don't look into it. So that's platform as a service, right? So that's the two models: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Let's come back to the Word document. Is everyone on the same page with me on these two models? Now let's talk about some additional pain points once again. So some additional pain points that you have is that since you own this business, uh, so what you are doing to maintain your customer relationship, you are using a spreadsheet based approach. So you created a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet wherein you created multiple rows and columns, and you have added all your customer information, your customer name, your customer address, your customer contact information, and the business or the services that they are purchasing it from you. All that you are maintaining on a spreadsheet. And with the passage of time, this spreadsheet is becoming too heavy, because now you have more rows and columns added to it, and it is becoming slow, and it is also a single point of failure. Slow, heavy, single point of failure. That's the challenge. At any point in time, if you want to put some analytics, like you want to see how many customers have I added in the quarter first of financial year 2024, you do not have appropriate formulas available in Excel, right? So you have very limited aspect. Similarly, for managing customer complaints, feedback, you're also using a software, in-house software application, which is based on spreadsheet. I'm saying the UI could be different, but in the backend, it's a spreadsheet wherein all the data is getting saved. So you're doing this for managing complaints, and at the same time, you're not able to understand. A customer is complaining, you resolve it, you put a note in the spreadsheet, a row is added, and then the customer complains for the same issue 6 months later. And you have no analytics in place to see whether it is the same customer with the same complaint. So you want to do something? Nothing. Your employees, when they are communicating, when they want to talk to one another, they are using WhatsApp. So you've created a group on WhatsApp, and on that WhatsApp group, they are communicating, right? So that's what you're using. Now tell me, is this the right approach? I'm saying, is doing business on WhatsApp group is the right approach? Should you be using WhatsApp for business communication, wherein you are sharing customer name, customer information, and doing business talks?
No, it's
Yes, no,
not.
maybe.
No,
No, no.
And what about this approach? Is this a long-term approach? I'm saying, will it go handy in the long term also? Right? It is not the right approach. Great. So if it is not the right approach, then what exactly you need? You need a solution. You need a solution that you can switch to get to provide greater or enhanced experience to your customers, so that you can reduce their complaints. You can get positive feedback. You can reduce the risk here of WhatsApp or somebody else gaining access to your communication. And that is known as my third solution. My third solution is software as a service. Software as a service refers to a ready-made solution that can be deployed or that can be used with minimal or no configuration without even building the infrastructure, without even building the application or managing the data. That's the example of software as a service, wherein everything is managed by the vendor, top to bottom. You can see bottom up approach. Vendor is managing the application and data also. The example is Office 365. If you use Office 365, you can instead of using WhatsApp, what you can do, guys? What is the solution in Office 365 for business communication?
Teams.
Teams, great. Teams and Outlook.
Yeah.
Using Teams and Outlook, you can securely communicate within the environment without any exposure to information. Microsoft Office also have a social networking solution. I'm saying, what if you want to talk about some personal stuff? I'm saying, when two employees wants to communicate, okay, what have you brought in lunch today? Okay, let's take a break. Let's go for a coffee. You probably don't want to do it on Teams because Teams is getting recorded. There is a record of everything that you do in Teams. Your Teams admin knows what you are doing. You want to do some personal communication. Do you know the solution in Microsoft Office? There is a solution. Yammer. That's the solution for personal communication similar to WhatsApp. And nobody monitors Yammer communication. By design, it is not configured to monitor because it is meant for personal communication between employees. Okay, what is the solution here for CRM? I can use CRM like Dynamics. I can use Salesforce. These are the ready-made solutions available under software as a service domain that you can quickly sign up to and you can start using them. For managing customer complaints, what can I use? What ITSM solution do you use in your office? Is that BMC Remedy? Is that ServiceNow or Jira or something else? Microsoft also has an in-house solution, which is SC System Center. What is that solution? That's part of System Center suite. I just don't remember the name. It's System Center solution. It's a solution which does the similar work, right? So you have multiple solutions available here. These are all solutions are ready-made available. And when anybody talks about software as a service, always remember one thing, that this service is offered via internet. This service will always be offered via internet, and you will consume this service via web browser URL. You don't need to deploy anything for this service. You will consume it through some URL. If you want to use Microsoft Office, the URL is portal.office.com. You can log into your Microsoft Outlook by typing portal.office.com and type your email address and password, and you will see your Outlook mailbox there. And to make it simple, you have downloaded an Outlook desktop client, and there you've configured your email so that you can also browse your emails while you're not connected to internet. Otherwise, you have webmail also available. Same is the case with Teams and Microsoft Office products like Word, PowerPoint, Excel. You can also use them online. That's the software as a service. So once again, anything that is readily available that does not require any configuration on customer part is known as software as a service. And I've given you examples with the use cases. Any question on this, guys? This is very crucial for you need to understand if you want to excel in cloud. Because with Microsoft Entra ID, you will manage authentication and authorization for all the applications that are configured in IaaS, in PaaS, in SaaS. Right? With Microsoft Entra, you will manage Office 365. With Microsoft Entra, you will manage Azure Data Factory, Azure Storage Account, Azure App Service, Azure SQL PaaS Database, Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure Data Lake, all the services, which is PaaS services. And with Entra, you will also manage your virtual machines. So you should have clear distinction and sound understanding of these three service delivery models and the differentiation in these models. Any question on this? All right, let's take, guys are back. Let's get started. Okay, so is everyone with me on this cloud service models? Any question on this?
No.
Okay, great. This is very important. I'm repeating once again myself. This is very important from cloud understanding perspective, and especially for Entra also, because at the end of the day, Entra will be used to manage and control access and authentication for all types of Azure services, which falls under various service delivery models, including but not limited to IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Okay, let's talk about business benefits of cloud. We've already talked about challenges, and with challenges we also talked about the benefits that cloud brings on the challenge, brings on the table the challenges of infrastructure, on-premises infrastructure, and the benefits of cloud. So if we look at the benefits, the first benefit is cost effectiveness. Cloud provides me pay as you go or consumption based model. When I say consumption based, if I'm using a server for 10 hours, I'll pay for 10 hours. If I'm using it for 20 minutes, I'll pay for 20 minutes. If I'm using it for 30 seconds, I will still pay it for 1 minute because it will always do a round off. However, if I'm using a server for 1 minute 20 seconds, then I will pay it for 1 minute 20 seconds because the cost of virtual machine is pay per second. Some services are charged pay per minute. Some services are charged on monthly basis. Some services are charged pay per second. But that is known as consumption based model, which means based on the consumption or usage, you will pay. There is no upfront commitment. You will not deposit a security of $1,000 before you start using a service. That's not with cloud. No upfront cost, no need to purchase any hardware. You can pay for additional resources when they are needed. You can stop paying for resources when you don't use them. And it also provides economies of scale. Can somebody give me an example of economies of scale? I'm saying if you had been from economics background or if you understand finances well, can anybody give me the example of economies of scale? All right. Okay, let's take this example. So, Monisha, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So, Monisha, since you own a business, if you want to purchase servers, how many servers do you think you will purchase in one go? 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100? How many do you think you will purchase?
It depends upon my requirement.
Okay. Even though it depends on your requirement, for any business, what do you think would be the number? Can that number be in 1,000? Can you purchase 1,000 servers in one go?
Maybe.
Maybe. Great.
If it's a large, if it's a large business, yes.
You can purchase 1,000 servers in one go. Great. Yeah. So let's say you are purchasing 1,000 servers from Microsoft Azure. Definitely, Microsoft will give you certain additional discounts because you are making a bulk purchase. Now, purchasing 1,000 servers versus 5 or 10 servers, there is going to be a difference in price. Are you with me on this?
Yes.
Great. So let's say one server cost you $100. 1,000 servers will cost you $100,000. Yeah. But that is not the case. 1,000 servers may cost you $100,000 because Azure may give you some discount. Sorry, $90,000. They may give you some 10% discount, right? When you purchase in bulk. Now, when you purchase, when your cost of acquisition is less, would you not offer cheaper services to your customer? So would you not pass on that discount to your customer? Let's say your job is you are GoDaddy. Your business is website hosting. So you host website for your customers, and for hosting websites, you need servers. So you purchase servers and then you give some space to your customers on those servers so that they can host their websites. So when you get certain discount from Microsoft, would you not be willing to pass on that benefit up to certain percent to your customers in terms of discounted pricing for hosting? Yes, no, maybe.
Sure, we'll do. Yeah.
Great. That's what economies of scale is all about. Cloud service providers purchase bulk, they make bulk purchase. They purchase 10,000 or 50,000 servers in one go. When I build a cloud data center, I have shared, in the prerequisites, I have shared one URL which contains a virtual tour to Microsoft Azure data center. Please watch that video of 4 minutes. In that video, you will get to know how big Microsoft Azure data center is and what is the approximate number of servers in a typical data center. That number is anywhere 50 to 80,000. So when Microsoft builds a data center, it makes a purchase of 80,000 servers. Let's say from IBM, Dell, Lenovo, HP, the server hardware manufacturer. When it purchases those many servers in bulk, it gets discounts from the hardware manufacturer. And Microsoft Azure passes on some discount to the consumers by putting the price tag of those servers at a lower rate. That's what economies of scale is all about, wherein you purchase in bulk, you get certain discounts as a business, and you pass on the benefit to your end consumers in the form of reduced prices. Are you with me on this?
Yeah. Yes.
That's economies of scale. So cloud also gives you economies of scale. We can see here it says cloud service providers, they are large businesses. They can pass on the savings to their customers because they purchase in bulk. Okay. CapEx to OpEx, you have already discussed. Agility, very important. When it comes to agility or being agile, nowadays we also talk about agility in project management. We use agile methodology in project management, which basically talks about being flexible to accommodate any changes while in the middle of the project. And we in PMP and other project management certifications, we talk about it. Agility basically means flexibility. Flexibility of accommodating changes on the fly. Your software must accommodate changes on the fly. Otherwise, it would be rigid and it would not be a good software. Right? So agility is basically means flexibility that you can change when the IT infrastructure changes. Now, cloud provides you agility in the form of scalability. You can start with a lower machine, a lower configuration machine. As and when you need, you can change the configuration on the fly. You can start with a higher configuration. Probably you are not 100% sure about the probable load or traffic that you may expect. And later on, you can reduce it. That's what scalability is all about. Scalability is of two types. Vertical scaling, which basically means you can add additional resources to the existing machine. You can start with 2 CPU core, 4 GB RAM. You feel that resources, that the machine is running slow, it is freezing because resource utilization is beyond 90%, 100%. You can quickly scale it up. Vertical scaling. You can choose another virtual machine with higher configuration. So the same machine you're scaling up, another size. Horizontal scaling basically means you can build your application using a golden image. And whenever your application requires more resources, with that image, additional servers will be built on the fly. So most of the customers today use horizontal scaling. The great example of horizontal scaling is OTT platform. If I don't know whether you noticed it, but when there was a live telecast of World Cup or this our recent Olympic Games, there were crores of consumers live telecast that was happening, and there were more than crores of subsequent sessions which were there. I'm say Hotstar. They even it became a great name at that point in time, wherein they published that we had more than 5 crore concurrent sessions or consumers watching live cricket match, final match. That's exactly happened. Today, when you have Flipkart and Amazon, when they run great Big Billion Sale or Amazon Great India Festival, those campaigns that they run every once in a while, you know, they make a lot of purchase, they make a lot of business. Multiple customers try to access the website at the same time because the products are available at a very cheaper rate or higher discounts, and you don't want to miss it. And the quantities are limited. They don't experience any delay, any outage. The website works perfectly fine. On the other hand, take examples of IRCTC. When it, the moment it is 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, you try to log in, you will not be able to log in. It kicks you out, even if you are logged in because you're smart. You are already logged in because you know that at sharp 10 o'clock, I will click on, I'll select my train and ticket and I will book it. It will log you out. It will kick you out quickly. And then you try to log in, it will not let you log in. I'm not saying that it happens with you, but it happens with majority of the people who are trying to use that website at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock in the morning while trying to book Tatkal tickets. It happens because they don't take scaling seriously, scalability seriously, because they are getting more business from their agents. Agents are given a different portal. They have a different URL and they don't face that issue because they are giving commissions and paying money to IRCTC. The perfect example of non-scalability is CBSE website. When the results of class 10th and 12th comes out, the website starts slowing down. There was a great example of income tax website also, but for the last 2 years, Infosys has really worked hard. They really made significant changes to the portal that even on the last day, even if you're trying to file the ITR on the last day at the last moment, the portal will work perfectly fine. Without any glitch, it will work perfectly fine. If it is not working, it is not scalable. If it is working, then it's horizontal scaling. Those are the examples of horizontal scaling. That we use in Azure is virtual machine scale sets. That's the service that we use in Azure for scalability. Now, related to Entra ID, how this is related to Entra ID. You know that Entra ID is responsible for authentication and authorization. Okay. Can you tell me the maximum number of concurrent authentication requests that an Entra ID tenant can handle or Entra ID service can handle? What if 100 users simultaneously try to authenticate an application which uses Entra ID for authentication? Can they authenticate? 100 users trying to authenticate at the same time, can they authenticate?
Yeah, definitely yes.
Okay, Suraj, 10,000 users trying to authenticate at the same time. Can they authenticate using Entra ID? Or do you need to increase the resources for Entra ID, the virtual machine on which it is hosted? Okay, the question is open to everyone. 100,000 users are trying to authenticate at the same time. Can they authenticate? Will they experience any outage? Will there be authentication issues? Will there be any TTL?
I don't think so. There will be an issue.
Okay, the answer, why? Why? It's a great use case for failure. When the number of user increases, when the performance goes down. Okay, Manisha, you're right. Even if there are 1 billion users trying to authenticate at the same time, Entra ID will still work flawlessly without any challenge. The answer lies in the service delivery model. Entra ID is a software as a service. It falls under software as a service, wherein Microsoft manages the backend infrastructure. Don't get confused. It doesn't fall under platform as a service because you have not written that application. Data definitely belongs to you, but data related to the tenant that you are using, not the application. That's why it falls into software as a service where Microsoft manages the scalability in the backend. There has not been a single instance in the past where Entra ID did not perform to the expectation when there were multiple simultaneous concurrent users or applications trying to authenticate, because it uses scalability in the backend. It is a software as a service. Are you with me on this? Now the question is Entra ID using vertical scaling or horizontal scaling? Think logically and give me the answer. Vertical scaling means Entra ID is deployed on one virtual machine. When the number of concurrent user authentication requests increases, it adds more resources to it. And horizontal basically means Entra ID tenant is deployed on some golden image through which the existing resources are getting provisioned based on the number of user sessions or based on the spike in demand. What do you think? Is Entra ID using vertical scaling or horizontal scaling? Suraj, what do you think? Is it vertical, horizontal? Okay, great. So that's on the scalability part. That with the help of scalability, these services are highly available, and that's what cloud provides, which is somehow not possible in case of on-premises environment. I would not deny the fact that it is not possible that you can't use scalability in on-premises, but the cost of scalability will be too high that you would not want to do it, and your IT may have limited budget from management. So you may be restricted to scale beyond a certain level. However, in cloud, there is no limit. You can scale up to thousands of instances based on the scalability configuration, whether it is manual or automated. So those are the benefits. Elasticity is another benefit. You can automatically add or remove resources based on demand. Next is availability. As I said, the detailed information is available in the recorded session that you can watch. Availability. When it comes to availability, cloud provides you high availability because they build services in the backend in redundant mode, which means there are two instances for each service that you use. And they also support disaster recovery because cloud has built their infrastructure in such a manner that the the regions are built for disaster recovery. Now for that, I'll show you the global infrastructure of Azure. Okay, so that's global infrastructure of Azure. Earlier, they would present it. And so you can see the map also here. This is the global infrastructure of Azure. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, Raghuveer.
So let's get answers of some questions, which is very important. When you tell somebody that you work with Entra ID, the person would assume that Entra is part of Azure and you should have good knowledge of Azure Global Infra. This is Azure Global Infra. What you see here is, let's understand the legends. I'm saying this white box denotes the region. So you can see Africa is one region. This is entire Africa. Similarly, if you just I'm say just zoom out, you will see India. This is India. India is one region. Similarly, this is United States of America. So Canada is one region, America is one region. What you see, the green circles basically denote, you can open it on your system. I pasted the URL in the chat window. The green circles denotes the region. Now understand the difference between geography, regions, and data centers. So India is a geography. Geography basically means it's a geography where Azure has its presence. So India is a geography. In India, there are three regions. If you look into India, there are three regions in India, which is South India, Central India. You don't see West. Mumbai is another region which is no more available to new customers. That's the reason they're not showing. But there is a data center of Azure in Mumbai also. And then India South Central, which is coming up, which is Hyderabad. So Azure has these regions, right? Now what Azure is doing, these regions are connected with one another through a high-speed fiber optics cable network, which has the capability of transmitting data at a speed up to 10 gigabit per second. Sorry, up to from 10 to 100 gigabit per second. And these regions are configured at a very reasonable distance. And so they are hundreds of miles apart from each other. So any natural disaster or any calamity will not affect both the regions. I'm saying one is in north, the other is in south, and there's a distance of 1,000 miles. So if there is any flood, if there is any thunderstorm, if there is any earthquake, it probably may not spread across 1,000 miles, which basically means that if east goes down, the west will continue to work. So it will help you with your disaster recovery strategy, wherein you can use central India as your primary region and South India as your DR region. So any mission critical application that you may have will be configured across central and South India. Or if I take the example of United States, then you can take it like this is your East Coast, this is West Coast. And East Coast is like New York, New Jersey, West Coast is California, Washington. So you can have East US as your primary region and West US as your secondary region. Now you see the difference. It's like thousands of miles. So it cannot happen that the same problem will occur at both regions. And if it happens, then it will be considered as global disaster. And in case of global disaster, you will be more focused about your own life rather your business. So forget about Azure at that point in time. Try and save yourself. So we have not seen any global disaster situation. We have recently seen that pandemic, Corona. Who was bothered about business at that point in time in the second wave? People were more bothered about themselves. They were more bothered about their own health. Nobody was bothering about business or employer or manager or KRAs, KPIs or whatnot. If we start to sneeze, if we start to have cough, we forgot everything and we bother about ourselves. That's global disaster. Perfect example of it. Everybody was bothered about themselves. Okay, so that's the region. If you want to understand it in numbers, Microsoft Azure has, as we speak, it has 300 plus data centers. It has 60 plus regions that Microsoft Azure has. You can get that number here. It says 60 plus regions, 300 plus data centers. Now, why they say 300 plus? Because they don't want to give you the exact number. Why they don't want to give you the exact number? Because this number keeps changing. It keeps increasing, not decreasing. Every other day, a data center comes live. So they can't, they don't want to keep changing this website all the time. That's the reason they put it 300 plus data center, 60 plus Azure region. If you want to know the exact number, it's 66. There are 66 regions of Azure as we speak, with plan announced for multiple regions. And if you want to see which regions is coming up in future, the answer is there in the previous slide here. In this map, global map, anything that you see in gray box, that gray box basically means that that region is coming soon. It's in the planning phase. Azure is currently building the data center in that region. That's what gray box basically means. So it takes time to load because it's a 3D map. Is everyone with me on this?
Yes.
Okay. The other business benefit is security. Now, when it comes to security, once again, I repeat myself, I had been into very, I would say, very complicated consulting assignments with, with financial institutions, wherein they had a lot of use cases wherein they wanted to protect their interest with respect to identities, with respect to data. And with the help of my team and my experience, and with the help of cloud service providers, fast track team, we were really able to address all of those concerns. So we were able to resolve it. And if you want to know more about Azure, as I said, Azure deploys 3,000 plus employees with $1 billion US dollar of budget every year sanctioned for security. And Azure cloud is complying with all of these regulations and standards that you see here. Azure complies with all. If you want to know more about Azure compliance, Azure has a separate portal wherein you can know about compliance, which is Azure Trust Center. You can type Azure Trust Center and it will open this Microsoft Trust Center website. Over here, you can get any amount of information. So you want to know whether Azure is complying in India for a specific compliance. You can click on compliance, you can select your geography, and you can check all the information. This portal is dedicated to answer any question that you may have with respect to compliance. You can also download this white paper, which gives you a lot of information about how do you manage compliance in Microsoft Azure when you are from a specific industry vertical, when you have your business set up in a specific geography or across multiple geographies. It answers all the questions. So go through it and ask any questions that comes to you. Just write it down or probably note it in a WordPad, Notepad, Word, and ask tomorrow when I start the session. Okay, so that's it. Now, what I want you to do, as I said, that I have shared all the information with you with respect to the prerequisites, because today's we wanted to focus on the prerequisites and bringing everyone on the same table. I have already covered these topics. Any shared responsibility model, I will talk about it. I will spend some time and cover it. Cloud overview, infrastructure, all that is covered. So doing was theoretical. Rest of the sessions will cover more of hands-on and less of theoretical aspects. Because for theoretical aspects, I will share the documentation URL and recorded sessions with you that you can watch in the watch prior. So tomorrow we'll be focusing on Azure networking, which basically means that you should have fundamental information of networking. If you don't have, just watch my fundamentals of networking session, in the AZ104 playlist. That will give you fundamental understanding of networking, because today we are going to build the network in Azure. We are going to understand, we'll be covering the entire service tomorrow. So we are going to understand how do we build a virtual network in Azure? What are the building blocks of virtual network? How do we configure network security group? How do we configure routing? How do we configure public and private IP? How do we assign IPs to a network interface? How do we configure connectivity between networks? All that we are going to cover tomorrow. So please make sure that you come prepared. So, any questions, guys? Okay.
I'm
If
good,
there are no,
Ramesh.
great. If there are no more questions, we can close the session for today. Please make sure that you work on assignment for today and agenda for tomorrow. Make sure, guys, you work on the agenda. As I said in the morning, this training is an opportunity to ask questions, get clarifications, fill the gap in your knowledge with respect to Azure and Microsoft Entra ID both. Take good advantage of this opportunity and and make the best of it. So with that said, we'll close the session for today. I wish you all the best. I'll